Welcome again to the channel. Welcome back. And of course, my name is Mr. B. And today we're going to talk about an issue that is coming back into the lexicon, constitutional reform. Now, again, me like preface the conversation, elections done. And of course, with elections, electoral choices have consequences. Constitutional reform, you will recall, has been a big subject throughout much of the last uh, 5 year term of the Jamaica Labour Party as government. And of course, the party then had some 40 odd, nearly 50 seats in the House of Representatives, 49 to be exact, and of course could do just about anything else. And one of the big subject issues that the administration seemed to have tackled was constitutional reform, to the extent that they even named a minister with responsibility for constitutional affairs, and that was this lady here, Marlene Malahoo Forte. Um, the she was the de facto subject minister with responsibility for constitutional affairs and constitutional reform. And what we notice now with the new administration that was sworn in after the September 3 general election is that Marlene Malahoo Forte has basically been benched. In other words, she has been demoted as a cabinet minister, placed at the back of the class, back of the house, no portfolio responsibility, and the responsibilities for constitutional affairs transferred to this man, Delroy Chuck's ministry, which is the ministry with responsibility for legal affairs, the justice ministry. Now, the sentiment or the signal that that sends, in my opinion, is that this process of constitutional reform in the new term of the Jamaica Labour Party is being deprioritized. You will recall that in the course of the last week, the issue came up for discussion in the talk circles, the news circles, where the Prime Minister has basically, having shifted the responsibility for constitutional reform to Delroy Chuck, has essentially appointed Mark Golding, who is the leader of opposition, to have that audience with Delroy Chuck. And in my opinion, that basically is a signal that this is not a priority of the JLP administration in this current dispensation. Now, keep in mind that the Jamaican Constitution, as it currently stands, has been in existence since 1962. It came into existence August 6, 1962, when we became independent, and that was some 63 years ago. And this was part of the independence settlement negotiated with Britain. It was largely drafted in London based on the Westminster model. The constitutional monarchy, two houses of parliament, which is the upper and the lower house, and a governor general who represents the British monarch. And from the outset, this document was never seen as a homegrown charter. In other words, it had very little input from the people of Jamaica. Very little input, and it was largely a negotiated document reflecting the British Crown's residual powers and the maintenance of British legal influence in the island. Now, separate and apart from that, apart from the draft itself and the acceptance of the Constitution, there has been very little changes with the Constitution over the years. Between 1975 and 1981, there was some minor tweaks which looked at political and administration of the island. There was another tweak again between 1999 and 2001, which looked at the dual citizenship. There was an amendment for that. And then in 2011, there was the Charter of Fundamental Rights. Now, reform of the Constitution has always been a source of contention between the two political parties, JLP and PNP. And as a consequence, the major constitutional reform, and I should point this out, does require a 2/3 majority in both houses of parliament, and in many cases, a national referendum. I mean, that's an option. You can make the changes within the parliament if you have the seats. And the JLP had those seats over the last 5 years. They had 49 seats, so they more than had the ability to do that. They would have needed to get a similar majority in the upper house, the Senate, and I think they would have been able to garner those votes, even with the opposition could have, with their senators in the House, could easily have blocked it. But that was the best opportunity to do a constitutional reform. And so, having given this responsibility to Marlene Malahoo Forte, her job was to get the job done. Essentially, after occupying the majority of seats, 49 seats in the House, you have all of the votes in front of you, the ability to do that. I think it is safe to say that Marlene Malahoo Forte's effort as minister with responsibility for this task was an absolute abject failure. And so she is paying the price of that failure. And the fact that she failed, and the fact that the government now does not have the seats in the House that they're going to be able to command that majority, that they could push these programs through, or these legislative changes through, it is going to make the task of reforming the Constitution considerably more difficult, if not impossible. Now, one of the problems with the whole business of reform, and this is a complaint that came back from the road, the people of Jamaica and civil society generally, maintain that constitutional issues they cite as elite or abstract and not really related to bread and butter concerns like crime or creation of jobs. And so it made the whole idea of constitutional reform politically unrewarding for political leaders either side, both PNP and JLP, to spend political capital on this business of reform. Mark you, the administration in them last innings did make an effort and could have succeeded. In fact, the Holness administration had put some markers in place that a lot of members of civil society who had the knowledge and the connection with the whole process had their opposition to, and voiced their opposition to these changes, which they were essentially saying that the government at the time had the power to force these changes down. And so Malahoo Forte, having not been able to deliver the baby, has been benched. And people may want to critique that, but those are just the facts. And so placing this in the lap of Delroy Chuck, to my mind, does signal that the administration is basically throwing this to the side, right? Now, Jamaica's institutions, in terms of and I'm talking here about the colonial legal inertia, institutions like the courts, civil service, and even its ceremonial structures still operate comfortably within the Westminster framework. Reform would mean deep structural changes, which both parties have always been cautious about. And then, of course, there is a question of changing priorities. It is my observation that the current administration's priorities have not changed. And of course, that's how politics work. Each administration starts with the reform rhetoric, which the current administration have basically, replaced the arguments on the agenda, except that they have slid it under the bottom of the pile by pushing it to Delroy Chuck. And Delroy Chuck's ministry well, what can be said? Let's leave that alone. Now, as I said, each administration starts with the reform rhetoric, but this is quickly overtaken by other more significant issues like fiscal, social, or international crises, which always succeed in pushing that into the background. Again, the constitutional committee that was formed, which again was headed initially by Marlene Malahoo Forte, had representatives from the government, the opposition, civil society, and legal experts. Now, it is important that the public understand that you can't reform the constitution unless you have the votes in the House, which means that the government must have a 2/3 majority. I see where people talking about all kind of bull crap, and this tells you what happens or underlines what happens when you have a population and a country that don't know nothing about civics. We stop teaching civics in schools, so people don't understand the importance, the significance, or the roles that the particular players have with respect to this issue. And so a lot of crap has been, raised out there. This is a matter that I don't believe that we're going to see any constitutional reform over the course of the next 5 years, because it's no longer a priority of the government. And in any event, just by virtue of how the process has started off, it's almost as if there's a direct attempt to ruffle the feathers of the opposition, because we don't intend to really go down the road with this, because we know we ain't going to get anywhere with it. And so I think Mr. Holness has strategically, tactically pushed it into Delroy Chuck's lap, knowing that the opposition leader ain't going to sit down with Delroy Chuck. And so what will happen is that months will turn into years, and years will turn into another political administrative term before this issue again gets visited somewhere around 2028-29, if there is an election at that time and there is a change of government. Well, whether or not, but the issue, in my opinion, is going to fail. Now, again, the administration had taken some steps. They passed the Constitution amendment, the Constitution Amendment or Republic Bill in 2024, which spoke about how they would replace the British monarch with a Jamaican president, ceremonial style, among other reforms. They also emphasize phasing out respecting constitutional timelines, such as required waiting periods on a bill, etc. All of these steps meant that for the first time, the reform process was being pushed, and it really went quite far. The drafting of bills, bringing them to Parliament, having constitutional scholars and public feedback, in as much as there is criticism that not enough was done. But many people in Jamaica did see that this was some progress. It was the furthest that the business of constitutional reform had gone since independence. Now, keep in mind, the times have changed. Election and election results. The elections have consequences. I believe that the government never expected in the first place that Marlene Malahoo Forte would have won back, would have retained her seat. And they had already been satisfied that she had basically wasted the opportunity given to her as a constitutional reform minister. And so there is no place in the cabinet for her. There's no the necessity for a minister with responsibility for constitutional affairs was basically kicked to the curb, because it's no longer a priority. And naturally, Malahoo Forte, having been an abject failure in respect of the tasks given to her, there was no place in the cabinet for her, because there's no place anymore for constitutional reform. And so that is my take. I believe that this is going to be continued to be kicked down the road, because there is no more urgency. And in any event, based on the current structure of the Parliament, the current structure of the seat counts within the House of Representatives, this thing is not going to pass, because the opposition is not going to give any ground. The government is worse, not going to give much ground to it. And so what we are going to be seeing is a kicking of the can continued down the road until, you know, most of it dead off or the thing just run out of gas. Tell me what you think about what I think. If you like the video, again, may I invite you to hit the like button. And of course, if you haven't done so yet, subscribe to the channel. You know, I'm promising that these are the kind of discussions that I'm going to be bringing to this YouTube channel. Non-partisan. We want to look at the issues and how it affects Jamaica, right? Of course, if we see something out there that we need to put some licks on the government or the opposition, trust me, you're going to get that, right? So when I look no friend, what we do is try to inform the public, right? So subscribe to the channel. Again, like, share the video, and check out the website at yardmedia.com, and just continue to give us the support. Big up on yourself.